Lady Evangeline was the epitome of English refinement until Prince George humiliated her before the entire court, declaring "you'll never dance like a lady," and banishing her for moving with too much passion. What seemed like social destruction became the catalyst for her greatest transformation, from a perfectly bred ornament into a woman who dared to choose authentic love over aristocratic approval. But when faced with the choice between comfortable respectability and uncertain freedom, how do we find the courage to become who we're truly meant to be? The crystal lights above Pemberton Hall sparkled like 1,000 diamonds. Lady Evangeline Ashworth stood at the edge of the grand ballroom in her ivory silk dress. She had spent 23 years learning to be the perfect lady. Her posture was straight, her smile was gentle. Her hands folded just right. "The prince wants you to lead the first dance," whispered Lady Charlotte, her fan fluttering with excitement. "What an honour, Evangeline! The whole court will watch you." Evangeline had practiced these steps 100 times. Her French teacher had called her dancing perfect. But as Prince George walked toward her, something felt wrong. Her heart beat faster. Her hands grew damp. "Lady Ashworth," the prince said in his deep voice. The whole room went quiet. "We hear you are a fine dancer." "You honour me, your highness," Evangeline replied. She curtsied low, her silk skirt spreading around her like water. The music began. Evangeline took her place at the front of the room. 300 people watched her every move. She started with the proper steps. 1, 2, 3, turn. But then something strange happened. Her body began to move differently. Her arms swept through the air like birds. Her feet found new rhythms. She felt alive in a way she never had before. The stiff, careful movements she had learned melted away. Instead, she danced with joy. Her whole body sang with the music. For a moment, she forgot about rules and proper behaviour. She was simply herself. Then the prince's voice cut through the melody like a sharp knife. "Stop this vulgar display." The music died. In the awful silence, Prince George spoke again. His words rang through the room. "You will never dance like a lady, Lady Ashworth. This wild show is beneath our court. We expected grace, but we see only the movements of a savage. Leave our presence." Every eye in the room stared at her. Whispers started like wind through dry leaves. Lord Pemberton stepped forward. "Lady Ashworth," he said softly, "perhaps you should go." Evangeline lifted her chin. She looked at all the shocked faces around her. "Indeed," she said clearly. "The air here has grown quite thick." She turned and walked toward the golden doors. Each step was slow and dignified. Behind her, she heard voices starting to gossip. They would spread her story through all of London by morning. In her carriage, rolling through the dark streets toward her aunt's house, Evangeline finally let herself cry. But beneath her tears burned a small flame. In those moments of free movement, she had felt something real and true, something that all their approval could never match. The woman who had danced with such passion was still inside her, waiting. Morning light streamed through the dusty windows of Aunt Cordelia's library. Books lined the walls from floor to ceiling. Lady Evangeline had found safety here among stories and ideas that most ladies were not allowed to read. Her aunt was different from other women. Cordelia had chosen books over marriage and travel over staying home. "My dear child," Cordelia said, sitting in her old velvet chair by the fire, "society's harsh words often come from their own small minds. You danced with feeling instead of just following rules. That shows a soul too big for their tiny boxes." For 3 months, Evangeline read books that had been forbidden to her before. She learned about science and nature. She read poems that spoke of freedom and truth. She discovered writers who said women could think as well as men. The shame from that terrible night slowly changed into something new. She began to wonder if her real mistake was not the dancing, but the years she'd spent hiding her true self. "You cannot stay hidden forever," Cordelia said one autumn day, as golden leaves danced past the windows. "Mrs. Harrington has invited you to her salon. She brings together the smartest people in London. They care about what you think, not just how you look." Mrs. Harrington's house was different from the grand halls Evangeline knew. The walls showed paintings of wild forests and mountains instead of stiff family portraits. Here, men and women talked about books, science, and big ideas that could change the world. At one of these gatherings, she met Alessandro Di Marco from Venice. He was not like the soft courtiers from her old life. His hands were strong from years of digging up ancient treasures. His eyes held the wisdom of someone who had travelled far and seen much. "Lady Ashworth," he said when they were introduced, "Mrs. Harrington tells me you love learning about nature. How wonderful to meet someone who seeks knowledge for its own beauty, not just to look smart at parties." They talked about rocks that told stories of the past. They discussed poets who wrote about the wild beauty of nature. They agreed that all people, men and women alike, should be free to learn and grow. "In Venice," Alessandro said, his dark eyes bright with passion, "I work with women scholars whose discoveries rival any man's. True intelligence has no limits of country or gender." As winter came, Evangeline looked forward to each salon meeting. Alessandro was not just smart, but kind. His travels had taught him to see the world with fresh eyes. He spoke of ancient civilizations with wonder, yet cared deeply about the problems of their own time. One snowy evening he told a story that made her heart race. "In Rome, I saw a young woman dancing in old ruins by moonlight. She moved not from training, but as if the ancient stones were teaching her steps lost for centuries. It was the most honest expression of joy I have ever seen." Evangeline caught her breath. "What did you think of such wild behaviour?" "I thought," Alessandro said, meeting her eyes, "that she had found something more valuable than any court's approval. She had the courage to be truly herself." In that warm room, surrounded by people who valued truth over tradition, Evangeline felt her shame finally fade away. Spring came early, bringing a letter that made Evangeline's hands shake. The Duke of Marlborough requested her presence at his grand estate. She knew without reading more that Lord Edmund Fairfax, her former promised husband, had finally found the courage to face the scandal that had broken their engagement. The long ride to Blenheim Palace felt like travelling backward in time, but she was not the same broken woman who had fled London 8 months ago. Books and friendship had shown her true worth. She sat straighter in the carriage, her chin high. Lord Edmund waited for her in the palace library. He stood tall and handsome by the marble fireplace, his blonde hair perfectly styled. Once, she had thought him the most wonderful man alive. Now she saw only a pretty shell with little inside. "Evangeline," he said in a careful voice, "I trust your time away has helped you think about what happened." "Yes, Edmund." "I've thought about many things." She sat in a chair with calm grace that clearly worried him. "Good. Then you understand that while your dancing at Pemberton Hall caused problems, I am willing to forgive you. People forget quickly. With careful planning, we can fix your reputation. Our engagement need not be ruined by this small mistake." His proud tone might once have hurt her. Now it only showed her how far apart they had grown. "How kind of you, Edmund. What would this careful planning include?" "Quiet behaviour, of course. A period of staying hidden in the country, then a small wedding with only family present. Once we're married, time and my family's power will slowly bring you back to society's good graces." Evangeline studied his face, seeing the smug satisfaction he barely tried to hide. He truly believed he was saving her, that any woman would gratefully accept such generous forgiveness. "And my love of learning? My friendships with scholars and reformers?" Edmund's face grew stern. "Such interests are not proper for a married woman of good breeding. Once you become my wife, you will have no time or need for such silly games." Those final words fell between them like a challenge thrown down. In that moment, Evangeline saw clearly the life Edmund offered. A golden cage where she would slowly die inside, her mind and spirit withering while she played the role society demanded. "Edmund," she said, rising gracefully from her chair, "I must refuse your generous offer." His face went through confusion, disbelief, and finally anger. "Refuse? Evangeline, you cannot be serious. After what happened, no good man would want you. I am offering you salvation, respect, a future." "You are offering me a prison," she replied calmly. "A life where I must always apologize for being something other than what you want. I have learned that I prefer honesty to respect, and real friendship to social standing." "There is someone else." The words came out like an accusation. "There is," she admitted without shame. "A man who values my mind and my heart, who sees my different nature as a gift, not a flaw. We share interests and dreams that reach far beyond England's narrow rules." Edmund's face flushed red with wounded pride. You would throw away everything for some foreign fortune hunter who fills your head with dangerous ideas. I choose love over safety, Edmund, partnership over ownership, a life with meaning over empty privilege. As her carriage rolled away from Blenheim Palace forever, Evangeline felt the last chains of her old life break away. The wedding took place in the ancient church of San Giorgio Maggiore, its tall walls reaching toward heaven like stone prayers. Coloured glass windows cast rainbow light across the marble floor. Evangeline wore a simple gown of ivory silk that moved like liquid moonlight, decorated only with old Venetian lace that had belonged to Alessandro's grandmother. A small group of friends from across Europe watched as they spoke their promises. There were no crowds of titled guests, no deals about money and land, no games of social climbing. Only two souls choosing to join their lives in pursuit of shared dreams. "In taking you as my wife," Alessandro said, his voice clear in the sacred stillness, "I promise not to hide you from the world, but to explore it beside you. Not to cage your spirit, but to celebrate its freedom. Not to own you, but to be owned by the joy of your friendship." Venice welcomed transformation like an old friend. Here, among waterways that reflected palaces built by merchants brave enough to dream beyond their birth, Evangeline became someone she had never imagined possible. Alessandro's work took them to dig sites throughout the region, where she discovered a gift for the careful record-keeping that serious study required. Their shared love of learning led to teamwork that amazed their academic friends. Evangeline's art training, once dismissed as mere ladylike skill, proved valuable in creating detailed drawings of their discoveries. Her knowledge of languages, developed through years of fashionable education, helped her translate ancient writings that had puzzled scholars for decades. By winter, she had begun writing articles for learned journals, first as Alessandro's helper, then increasingly under her own name. The thinking community of Venice, more worldly and less rigid than London society, judged her work on its worth rather than dismissing it because she was a woman. 6 months after her wedding, Evangeline stood on the balcony of their palace watching the sunset paint the Grand Canal in shades of gold and rose. She marvelled at how far she had travelled, not just in miles, but in understanding herself and what life could offer. The woman who had been shamed by a prince for dancing with too much passion had become a scholar whose insights into ancient civilizations earned respect from learned men across Europe. "You look thoughtful, my love," Alessandro said, joining her at the marble rail. His weathered hands covered hers as they watched gondoliers navigate the eternal dance of Venice's waterways. "I was thinking of that evening at Pemberton Hall," she said. "What seemed like the destruction of my life became its liberation. Prince George condemned me for failing to dance like a lady, but he could not know that his judgment would free me to become something far more valuable, myself." As night fell over Venice and palace windows began to glow like golden jewels along the canal, music drifted across the water from some distant celebration. Without thinking, Evangeline began to sway gently to its rhythm. But now there was no shame in her movement, no fear of judgment, only the pure joy of a woman who had learned to dance not for others' approval, but for the simple pleasure of being vibrantly, authentically alive. The woman who once sought validation from princes had learned that the only applause worth seeking was the quiet satisfaction of a life lived according to one's deepest truths.